Welcome, Eric, to Metaladium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Replacire, this new album, The Center That Cannot Hold, and obviously more things related to the metal world in general. So we are starting by asking, so how has the band been during the last 7 years? Because this album delayed 7 years.
Yeah. 7 years. Yeah. Well, it was tough because when Do Not Deviate came out, which is our album, before this, pretty much the whole band slowly they all left, for their own different reasons, and so we didn't really get to ride the wave of releasing the album and touring. So there was a lull. We had to find new members. We had some fill-in guys. We did some short runs. But it was hard to write with an incomplete band and all of our energy going into trying to be ready to play shows and trying to find new guys. So it got delayed a little. Then we started to write, a little bit. I was trying to write, but it's been hard for me to be inspired to come up with stuff since then up till now, even. But then when we finally locked in the current lineup that you hear on the record, things started to roll nicely. Especially the other guitarist, Pohawk. He really did a lot of the heavy lifting as far as composing. He produced all the demos, before we recorded the album with me, and the other guys, of course, contributed. I can't not give everybody credit. It's very much a group effort. We're not one of those bands where one guy does all the composition and says, "Okay, here's your part, here's your part, here's your part." I'm not that guy. I work very well with a team. I have a clear vision of what's going on, but I need the other guys to do it, right? So in the beginning there was a lot of growing pains, a lot of butting heads. Pohawk and I would fight, get into arguments, and eventually we reached a nice balance where he understood what I was trying to go for. I understood what his kind of style was, and he was open to my input. I was open to his ideas, and we came up with, well, the album, I guess, that you hear now. And I think it's pretty cool. And a lot of it, if you want a picture, was Pohawk here at the computer, right in front of the whatever program he was using, and I'd be kind of over his shoulder, like, oh yeah, now the riff goes like this. Okay, now repeat it. Okay, now and the other guys were there putting in their 2 cents, and so yeah, man. 7 years. It was finding new members. It was trying to play shows while there was still some buzz for the last album. It was trying to reach a balance of being able to compose with new people. And then it was just trying to come up with the material. The stuff is, we hold it to a high standard, and it takes a while to compose. So, and then you actually start the recording process, which is a whole year in itself, so, it's not like we just put the project down and picked it up, like a year ago. It's been 7 years of working, and that's just how long it took. It seemed like we'd never get here, but we did. So anyway, in a nutshell, that's kind of what went down.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys are back with this new album. So will come in by the end of June 21st. So
Yeah,
it's
coming up.
exciting to see a band with a new lineup, as you mentioned, releasing two albums also previously, and now this new album. So how
Hmm.
did their songwriting and recording process differ from your last album this time around?
Well, the previous two albums, we did a lot of in let's call it loud rehearsal, writing and rehearsal, right, full volume. This one was a lot of composing in person, like with practice amps, and recording as we were writing. So every little detail was stressed over. You know what I mean? Very thorough. The recording process was better this time around because the previous two albums, I had another engineer do it, and I wanted full control this time, so I was able to really produce everything the way that I thought it should be produced, and then give it to a mix engineer. In this case, it was Jens Bagren. So I'd say, maybe to boil that down, is more professional, I suppose, this time around, and yeah, more thorough.
Mm, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So Many bands and musicians see each album as a child, each one special in its own way. So it's a bit of cliche to say that each album new release is the band's best. But you do consider this third album to your best work to date? If so, what are the reasons that make this your best album?
It's definitely the best one to date. Yeah. I think the reasons for that are uh, we've all grown as players. Um, and yeah, there's new guys in the band, but um, I've always wanted Replacire to be a heavy band, a really heavy band. And the first album is almost goofy. And then the second one gets a little closer to that heavy sound I was going for. This one, we really were able to lean into the heavy breakdown riffs, the fast, blasty stuff. It still has the brainy, ethereal, kind of proggy stuff that I just can't seem to get away from. But we really were able to lean into being heavy. And something that I think really sets it apart from the other two is the intensity of the vocals. Our previous vocalist, Evan, fantastic, amazing, super talented. Can't say enough good things about him. But our new guy, James, he's not afraid to let go and really push himself to the brink of destruction. And especially on the title track, The Center They Cannot Hold, he pushed himself so hard, and he let me push him to get performances out of him that left him, just in a heap, shaking on the ground, and that's not something we were able to really achieve before. So heaviness, intensity, quality, definitely are all improved on this record.
Okay, okay. Lyrically, what themes do you explore on this new album? Where does the inspiration come from, and why do you choose the name "The Center cannot hold"?
Yeah, the name came from me just feeling like I was falling apart, trying to keep the band going and make it happen. So it's a little bit of a self self reflection there. And the lyrical content of the album it's not a concept album. It's not like it tells a story or anything, but for some reason I feel like a lot of the Replacire stuff, even the previous albums, sort of gravitate towards this overall or overarching theme of life can be pretty hopeless, it can be pretty hard, it can be stressful, it can be depressing, but you can push forward, you can push through it. There is hope in the hopelessness, and we don't directly say that. It's not like that's a verbatim quote, but for some reason when I listen as passively as I can, not being inside it, that's the feeling I get from it. But as far as some of the specific things on this album, it's kind of all over the map. Like Living Hell is about an experience that James had in his own personal life of witnessing something very, very traumatic. I don't want to speak too much on it. If he ever wants to talk about it, he can, but I don't feel right sharing it. It was something he shared with me. And when he told me the story, it was very heavy, very, very serious, very dark. I was like, James, could we write a song about that? And he was like, yeah, so he was able to tell his story through that. um the Helix Unravels is another one of James's sort of life experiences. It sort of blurs the lines of a very serious relationship ending of his and his bout with skin cancer that he had, where it could have been, luckily he's okay now, but for a minute he wasn't really sure about his mortality, let's say, so facing death. um there's a song on there, Inglorious Impunity, that's just about this scumbag that before I lived in this apartment, I lived in a house with a bunch of people, a bunch of randoms off of Craigslist, and this guy was a fucking scumbag, and he threatened to hurt my cat. I have a cat who I love, and anyone out there that has pets, I think you'll relate to this. He threatened to hurt my cat, and we got into a fight, and I got arrested, and it was a whole fucking thing. And we wrote about what a piece of shit he is. And yeah, and then the rest of it, is kind of just sort of metaphorical. You can take what you want out of it. Um, um, but that's what's cool about lyrics, I think, is that you can draw your own conclusions. And a lot of it was very collaborative between James and I. He would write something, and I would kind of interpret it, and I would add to it, and we had a good time trying to come up with lyrics for the songs.
Hmm. Okay, okay. So the cover art looks great. Also, it brings me to mind something like visceral, something like nuclear, because for the green color. So how
Oh,
do
that's
you
cool.
choose your album art and what were you trying to express with it?
Yeah. So the artist we used for this album, his name's Andrew Tremblay, and he's done some T-shirts and some flyers for me in the past. He's a really great guy, really great artist. Highly recommend him if anyone's looking for art. And the guy who did our previous two albums was Brendan Flynn, another incredible artist, great friend of mine, amazing guy. He's an oil painter, so those two previous records were oil paintings that he scanned and brought in digitally. And I was talking to him a little bit, and it didn't work out booking him for it, so we went to Andrew. And when I got on the phone with him, I was like, all right, man, I want this to be like very different from the previous two because the previous two are similar color schemes, the orange, the red. There's like sort of a skull on one. There's like a humanoid sort of creature on the second one. So I don't want like a face or a person or anything. I want something. I don't know if it's a landscape or I was very vague, but something that's not these two, right? So we came up with the colors. I was thinking either blue and black, like my shirt, or green and black. And we landed on the green and the black, and then the gold lettering, and I thought that looked really cool. And then he came up with the art that you see on there, and I think he just nailed it. It's just very very cool, and I think sort of captures the essence of the record. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And what did you decide to change the cover art maker? Because the first two were did by Brandon Flynn, and
Yep.
brings me a little, well, brings me a little remembrance from the covers from the 90s, especially from Dancy Grave. That's I
Yeah.
remember. And now
Yeah.
this new album is more like 90s, but the end of the night is brutal stuff. So why do you decide to change the cover art, the colors, and the obviously the maker?
Oh yeah, well I wanted it to stand out, like if they were on a shelf, whether it's at a record store or in your collection, I wanted it to be very noticeable. Like that's the first one, that's the second one. Ooh, that's the new one right there. That's different. It stands out. So that was kind of part of the conversation that we had when we were brainstorming the idea.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So how do you feel the fan reception to the singles has been promoted? The new album with the last previous two singles. So how do you usually choose the singles for a new album, considering that your sound is very diverse and it would be difficult to have one song that encompasses all music that you put on each album?
Yeah, that's a really great point. It is all kind of different, and so I had some conversations with our label rep, and he talked to his team, and I kind of was very open. I told him, hey, whatever you guys think would be cool to release, I'm okay with it. It's not like there's any songs that I really don't like, and so they came up with a list. We got on a call and we picked out, one, two, three, and we decided on the title track, the Helix or the Center That Cannot Hold, because it was just, I think it's the heaviest one. It's straightforward, it's heavy hitting, it almost has a new metal essence, which I thought was really fun to lean into. And it got a little bit of hate on YouTube, some comments, but to be expected, who cares, right? But a lot of people loved it. Then we released what was the second one that we did there? Um, I should know, but either way, the second song that we that we put out was a little more dense, a little more proggy. Had some of the stuff that you would expect from us. And then the Helix Unravels, I think, is the most Replacire sounding song of the three singles. So I thought it was a cool way to unveil it. Something a little different that you wouldn't expect, something a little closer, and then something very much like what sounds like us. And then the album will be out soon, and people can experience the whole thing in its entirety and hear the new stuff, hear the old stuff, hear what we've done different, and yeah. So that was kind of a bit of the process in choosing the singles there.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, talking about now the promotion of this new album, what are
Yeah.
your plans? What are your plans for this new album, The Center That Cannot Hold? Perhaps you will present videos, or perhaps more videos. You will go on tour, or who knows what? Or perhaps you already recorded a new album for the next year. Who knows? What kind of plans do you have for the band and the album?
Yeah, yeah. No, man, I wish we were that far ahead and had another record out. There's nothing written for the new one. It's I'm so burnt out on this. You know, it takes so much work. There's going to be definitely a long decompression before any new music is considered. Um, I wish we had the budget for a video. That was definitely a dream of mine to do a cool video, but there just isn't, unfortunately. And touring probably isn't going to happen just for budget restrictions. If we had some sort of financial backing or something, maybe it'd be possible, but it's just not in the cards. So that being said, I just hope the album comes out and people really just like it and enjoy it. And when you're driving in your car or you got your headphones on, you're at the gym, you're walking around town, whatever, like sitting at home working on stuff. I just hope it's something people can enjoy, and get something from. That's really my biggest goal with
No?
releasing this. Yeah,
Okay, okay. You've been around for a little over more over 10 years, and you already have 3 albums.
yeah.
As a young band, what inspires you to create new music and a bed of new releases in a digital age where you have hundreds of bands releasing albums every week or every weekend? So
Yeah.
there is a lot of competition now. So do you feel like you have to compete with a lot of bands? What advice would you give to us to aspiring musicians?
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's a really great question. That's a loaded question. Um, why? I guess it's sort of like why? Why do you do it? I don't know. It's just a need to create. It's always just been in me, and I'm lucky that I have a team that feels the same way, that they also want to do it. But at the same time, it's very draining and it's very hard to keep up with, especially when life is so tough on its own, trying to pay the bills and make rent and live a life, on top of it. It gets really, really hard. Um, as far as competition with other bands, I never really thought about that too much. I always figured if your stuff is good enough, people will latch onto it, and we're not a huge band, but we have some fans and people like us, and I think that's really, really cool. And every time I ship out some CDs across the world, I'm really honored and touched that people, want to hear my stuff or our stuff. So advice I would give to aspiring bands, I mean, just do it. Just put everything you got into it and just do it and send it out there and see what happens. It's no one's gonna make millions being a metalhead, so you gotta love it and you gotta want to do it, and that's all there is to it.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
As I mentioned in the first question, talking about other kind of things, especially into the metal also, being about with better sound, how do you see the issue of labels? Fans and media always try to label bands and start playing with words like symphony, black, death, thrash, progressive, and a lot more labels,
yeah.
etc. So how do you see describe your sound yourselves?
Yeah, I think the label for us that I've seen and I would agree with is progressive technical death metal. I think that hits the three main things. Progressive, sort of describing the weird time signatures, the odd song form, the dense chordal structures. The technical part being some of the speed and the technicality of the riffs. You have to be somewhat of an adept musician, to pull some of this stuff off, which would be the exact definition of technical. And then death metal, just being heavy,
Mhm.
screaming vocals, heavy drums, heavy riffs, breakdowns. So I think labels are good because they can describe what you would expect to hear from a band, but I think they're bad when people get upset when you break the norm. Like some of the hate that we got for the song "The Center That Cannot Hold" because it has new metal aspects of it. Like, so what? New metal's awesome. Like, I love Slipknot. I love System of a Down. Fuck, I'll listen to Limp Bizkit sometimes. Why should anyone care? It doesn't all need to be true death metal, black metal, whatever. I love that shit. Don't get me wrong, but if you're gonna get mad because somebody's experimenting with a sound, that's kind of silly, right?
Mhm.
So I have no problem with labels. I think they're great. I think it's when people take it to an extreme of anger or hate, because of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I imagine you must also mention sometimes that your sound is reminiscent of certain bands that may have inspired you. But
Yeah.
but you ever been told that you sound like a certain bands when you really don't?
A lot of people have compared us to Between the Buried and Me,
Mhm.
which I don't listen to them really, and I don't think our stuff sounds like them. But I've gotten that comment quite a bit throughout the years. Um, but some of the stuff I do agree with is we've been compared to Death, which I love, and I do hear some similarities. We've been compared to Cynic. We've been compared to the Dillinger Escape Plan. We've been compared to the Faceless. I'd agree with all that, and those are definitely heavy influences on myself and some of the other members for sure.
Mm. Okay, okay. We are closing. We are very, as I mentioned, one of the last questions for this interview, and talking about the topic that changed the perspective of understand or of the understanding of metal worldwide. It is social networks. As you know today, thanks to these media, metal became more understandable and more comprehensible, and even lost that sense of impact, fear, of mystery that it had during the 70s, 80s, and 90s when we talk about brujeria, for example, and you believe that they were narco-satanics people. I remember very well of the 90s. Or talking about King Diamond was thinking that he lived in a castle with dragons, monsters, this kind of stuff. Or Bruce Dickinson writing lyrics to only bother conservative people or
Mm,
to someone piss off, or ideas
mm,
of satanists by many black metal bands. Now there's no mystery or curiosity that metal gave up on you on a general level. So what's your
mm.
point of view about this move away from the fear, mystery, or curiosity that the metal had before and now everything is comprehensible?
Yeah, that I hadn't thought too much about that, but you bring up some good points. I remember when I was a kid, all I had was the CD, right?
Mhm.
And you could look at the pictures of the band, you could read the thank yous of the liner notes and the lyrics, and that's kind of all you knew. Maybe they had some weird half-made website and you could look at some stuff there, but yeah, it is a lot more accessible to see who the people are behind the music these days, and that could take away some of the mystery and some of the fun of it. But there are some bands that lean into it. They're not on social media, they're not promoting, and that's cool as a fan if you're a fan, but at the same time that probably hurts them as far as record sales, as far as promotion, as far as whatever. So I guess it's a bit of a double-edged sword. You got to play the game of social media to promote yourself and be successful, but you lose some of that mystery and some of that
Yeah.
coolness that we had before. So yeah, that's a really great point. I hadn't considered that, but you're absolutely right there. Yeah, that's I guess that's all I have to say. That's great. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Well, Eric, we come to the sad moment of this interview. I hope you enjoyed this interview as I did, and thank
Mhm.
you very much for your time. This new album is tremendous album for the band as usually.
Thank you.
Rec, great technical death metal. Maybe you have something to add to your Latin fans and obviously Metallerium followers.
Something to add? No. Thank you so much for having me. It always means a lot that people want to have me on and talk about the record. I hope people enjoy it. Honestly, we put a lot of work into it, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. So yeah, thank you, and thank you to everyone listening.